Today's idea is one of those ideas that if you listen very carefully and you actually accept what I'm saying to be true, it could change your life. It could change your life in a very, very positive way. But it's a lot to accept because it's a little bit of a novel insight and a little bit of a counterintuitive insight. And it's easier to understand intellectually than it is to actually accept in your heart. So let's begin. In this week's parsha, we read about the sale of Joseph. So Jacob has 12 sons and one daughter, and his favorite is Joseph, and he treats him with favoritism, and the brothers are envious, and then Joseph has his dreams, the first dream of the bundles, the bowing bundles, and then there's a second dream of the genuflecting galaxies. The sun and the moon and the stars are all bowing to me, and the brothers are like, oh, are you going to be better than us? You're going to dominate us? You're going to be a king over us? You're going to lord over us? And Joseph is a youthful, he's maybe a bit infantile, and he's telling his father about some of the bad things that the brothers are doing, and they just hate him, and they're stewing in their hatred, and ultimately they have him isolated, and they decide it's time to kill him. He's a nuisance, he's a danger, we have to kill him. Cooler heads prevail, and they settle for just selling him as a slave. And that's the story. We know the story really well. Parsha begins, the brothers, the enmity that the brothers have towards Joseph, and the ultimate sale of Joseph down to Egypt. He's sold to Egypt. There's the Ishmaelites, there's the Midianites, there are the merchants. Eventually he's bought by Potiphar, the one of the ministers of Pharaoh in Egypt. And then we follow Joseph further. He is seduced by his master's wife, and he refuses her seductions, her propositions, but he's framed for a crime he didn't commit, and he's put in jail as if he were a criminal. And he's in jail for a long time. According to our sages, it's many, many years. And he gets some cellmates, two of the ministers of Pharaoh, the disgraced ministers of Pharaoh. And they have dreams, and their dreams are interpreted by Joseph. I have good news for you, Mr. Butler. You will be restored to your post in 3 days. Mr. Baker, I have some less good news for you. In 3 days, you will be decapitated. And he tells the butler, do me a favor, invoke my case to Pharaoh. I'm here for a crime I didn't commit. Help me get out of this dungeon, this pit. And the parsha ends where the butler not only did not remember Joseph, after he was restored to his post, he forgot about Joseph. Now, the story of Joseph does not end. In next week's parsha, we read how Pharaoh has 2 dreams. So if you're counting, we have Joseph's 2 dreams, the butler's dream, the baker's dream, and now Pharaoh has 2 dreams. Dreams of the fat and skinny cows, dreams of the healthy and the very weather-beaten stalks of wheat, and he's very disturbed by it. They're trying to find some interpretation, and the butler remembers Joseph. Joseph is brought to Pharaoh, and eventually Joseph is elevated and promoted to being viceroy of Egypt. So let's start with a question. You read Joseph's story, favorite son of Jacob, and by the end of the book of Genesis, he's king of Egypt, and he's overseeing this massive effort, stockpiling all the food, preparing for the 7 years of famine. Joseph ends up to be king. But if you examine how he got there, it's very unusual. He has 2 dreams, and that takes the hatred and the enmity and the dislike of his brothers, and it just puts it on steroids. And that causes them to want to kill him, ultimately settle to sell him as a slave. He goes down to Egypt in chains, and he's there for a long time. And then there's dreams that demonstrate his aptitude at interpretation of dreams. Those are the dreams of the butler and the baker. And then there's Pharaoh's dreams. And he's so disturbed by them, and he wants an interpretation, and Joseph is summoned from the pit. So isn't it interesting that all these pivotal transformations of Joseph's life are all brought about by dreams? 2 dreams of his own grandeur and supremacy over his brothers, 2 dreams of his cellmates, 2 dreams of Pharaoh. Why is every step of Joseph's ascent connected to dreams? Isn't that interesting? Now, if you look at how the brothers respond to Joseph's dreams, you'll find something very interesting. Joseph tells them a dream, and they hate him. Now, you read that very, very fast, or very without paying attention to every word. You'll say, okay, he said why they hate him, because he said in his dream, I'm going to rule over you. You'll bow down before me. But if you read it very carefully, you find something very different. I'll read you the verse. Vayachalom Yosef chalom. Joseph dreamt a dream. Vayaged le'achav. And he told his brothers. Vayosifu od sno uso. And they increased their hatred to him. Before Joseph told them the content of the dream, just the fact that he told them the dream, that in itself made the brothers hate him. Why? It's evident from the verse that it wasn't the content of the dreams that raised their ire, their enmity. It was the fact that he was telling over the dream. Even if the content was benign, they would have hated him because he told them his dream. Why? There's an implication here that Joseph's dreams are very important to Joseph. And indeed, in the story, it's very important. He has 2 dreams, and that kind of propels the brothers' hatred. He gets sold. He's in a very unfortunate circumstance in Egypt. And then there are dreams, and that kind of establishes his credibility, his aptitude to the butler or the baker. And then there's more dreams, and he gets elevated to being a king. That's Joseph's relationship with dreams. The brothers, they don't have any dreams in their story. We don't know of any dreams. The Torah doesn't record any dreams of any one of his 11 brothers, as far as I'm aware. And when he tells the dreams to his brothers, they hate him, not necessarily because of the content of the dreams, that's one thing, but also because of the fact that he's dreaming and he's telling it to them. The question is why? Why do they have such a hostile reaction to Joseph's dreams? Okay, question 1. Question 2 is a little bit of a sophisticated question. The first and the last verse of the parsha say very, very surprising things. The name of the parsha is Vayeshev, which means, and he settled. Who settled? Jacob settled. Jacob had lived a very chaotic life, fighting with his brother, stealing the blessings, forced to escape, going to Laban, forced to contend with Laban, going back, forced to contend with Esav again, the episode of Dinah. It's just been nonstop. And now he's settled. He wants to settle down. He wants to relax. And you read Rashi. Rashi says something unbelievable. Jacob wanted to relax. He wanted to live in peace. So much chaos, so much turmoil, so much drama. It's time to relax. And God said to him, so to speak, oh, is it not enough that you'll relax in paradise, in heaven? You want to relax also now? No relaxation for you, Jacob. Oh, you think you're going to calm down? Think it's going to be all easy now? You think the chaos is all behind you? Watch what's going to happen. Joseph, the brothers, you have more chaos ahead of you. It's almost like Jacob is criticized for wanting to have just some peace, tranquility, and serenity. What's wrong? What's wrong with wanting a little bit of respite from all the drama? That's the first verse of the parsha. The last verse of the parsha, when Joseph is in Egypt, in the pit, in the dungeon, and he tells the butler, hey, do me a favor, remember me, tell Pharaoh about my story, maybe I could get a clemency here, I could be freed, commute my sentence. And the butler forgot about him, he didn't remember him. And Rashi tells us, Joseph, what are you doing? You're trusting this Egyptian butler? Trust in God. What are you doing asking him to help you? Because you relied on the butler, 2 more years of incarceration. Similar idea. Jacob wants a little respite, wants some calmness. What do you think, Jacob? What are you trying to do? I'm going to put you in a very difficult situation. No calmness for you. Joseph, he's in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and the Torah criticizes him, so to speak. Joseph, you're relying on the butler? You trying to improve your circumstance? You want a little respite? 2 more years of incarceration. To us, we think that's the most basic due diligence to try to get out of your bad situation. You've been through a lot. You want to relax. You want out of your difficult circumstance. And the Torah seems to say that Jacob and Joseph made a mistake, and we don't really understand where they went wrong. What was Jacob do that's so bad? What did Joseph do that was so bad? Finally, another question. Jacob and Joseph. Jacob has a favorite. He has 12 sons. One of them is his favorite. Who's that? That's Joseph. Joseph is the favorite. How is that manifested? So Rashi tells us that he taught Joseph all of his Torah. Jacob had lots of Torah that he studied in the academy of Shem and Aver. And all the Torah that he studied at Shem and Aver, all that he conveyed to Joseph. And that's what it means that he was his favorite. Now, this academy of Shem and Aver, it appears a few places in Genesis. We know that Shem is the son of Noah, and Aver is the great-grandson of Shem. So this harkens back to the flood, like before Abraham, right? And Hashanah tells us that Abraham was a student of this academy. And Jacob was a student of this academy. And there were actually 2 academies that operated concurrently. Because Abraham, he founded an academy, and Isaac was in the academy of Abraham, and Jacob was in that academy, but there was a second academy, the academy of Shem and Aver. Interesting. And Jacob was a student of this academy. And all the Torah that he studied in this academy, he taught to Joseph. So Joseph was also a student of this academy. So there's 2 academies. Abraham's academy, Shem and Aver's academy. Why is there a need for 2 academies? Why can't they just merge into one mega academy? And why did Jacob study specifically in this academy? And why did he teach specifically the Torah of the academy of Shem and Aver? Why specifically that was conveyed to Joseph? So we have a bunch of questions here about the whole episode, the saga of Joseph. He's dreaming, and that's very significant. The brothers, they call him a dreamer as if it's a pejorative. Oh, here comes the dreamer, this silly infantile one. Let's kill him. Oh, let's throw him into the pit. Oh, let's sell him as a slave. Joseph takes it very seriously, he tells it to his brothers. And indeed, in Joseph's story, they're like prophetic. They all foretell the future. And they all play a very significant role in Joseph's ascent to the monarchy. So there's a very different perspective on dreams, Joseph versus his brothers. We have Jacob and Joseph seeking respite and being punished for it. Jacob settled. Oh, it's been crazy. It's been a crazy couple of decades. I'm ready for a little bit of relaxation. Jacob, you want relaxation? No. There will be no relaxation for you. Joseph, you want to get out of prison and you're relying on the butler? 2 more years of incarceration. What is the big mistake of Jacob and Joseph? And why do Jacob and Joseph, why are they pupils of the academy of Shem and Aver specifically, and how does that academy differ from the academy of Abraham and Isaac? These are some of the questions that I want to pose. And the answer, like I said earlier, you'll understand it, I'm sure. But whether or not you'll agree with it and implement it, it's a lot to ask. Because I'm going to tell you, you're going to say, no, I don't want that to be true. No, why? Let's begin. What are the ideal conditions to flourish? You want to grow, you want to develop, you want to advance, you want to deepen your relationship with the Creator, you want to develop yourself. What are the ideal settings for that? So we imagine 72 degrees Fahrenheit, an easterly breeze, a coffee and a seltzer, and a Coke Zero, a full stomach. Not too full though. And not with Chinese food, because that's bad. Bad for Torah study. Peace, serenity, tranquility, a nice workout in the morning. That's how we imagine. Why? Because then you could just focus on the study. Nothing's disturbing you. Nothing's bothering you. If there was a war and you're having to dodge bullets and bombs, and there's little food, and there's people attacking you, how could you possibly study, advance, and grow? Those are not conditions that are propitious for development. I think we would all agree with that sentence. However, here's the point. Joseph and his brothers all became great people. These are the founders of our nation. These are the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel. They're all giants, all of them. I want to propose that they took different, almost opposite paths of ascent. Joseph's path and the brothers' path were completely different, even opposite. The brothers, they saw Joseph, and they're like, what should we do with him? Should we kill him? Should we throw him into a pit? Or should we sell him? Like that was the scope of options of what to do with Joseph. The idea that Joseph would become this absolute titan, greater than all of them. That was like, he was obviously destined for failure. It was clear to them. There was no way that Joseph is going to ascend. He's a good for nothing. So what do we do with him? Should we kill him? Maybe we shouldn't. What benefit do we have? Maybe we should sell him. That's how they saw Joseph. And the reason why they saw Joseph in such a negative light is because they didn't understand how Joseph would grow, how Joseph would develop, how Joseph would actually become greater than them. Because there's different paths. The path of Joseph and the path of everyone else. Let's explain. What do you do if you're in a war? God forbid. It could be a war, a physical war, a hot war, a kinetic war, or it could be some other internal turmoil, a war, a spiritual war, perhaps. What should you do? Should you say, listen, this is not the time to grow. This is not the time to ascend. Because this is war. I'll wait for things to quiet down. I'll wait for things to become more propitious for growth, for development, for ascent, for elevation. The Mishnah tells us, Hillel, al tomar likishe efna, eshna. I always say, everyone remembers this Mishnah because it rhymes. Al tomar, do not say likishe efna, eshna. Efna, eshna. It rhymes. Don't say, when things are available, and I have the peace of mind, and I have the time, and I have the attention span, then I'll study. Well, now I can't study. I can't study now because I don't have that availability. Al tomar likishe efna. Don't say that when things are available, then I'll study. Why? Shema lo tipana. Because perhaps you won't have that ability. Maybe you won't have that ability. It seems that what Hillel's telling us, that yes, it would be ideal to have the peace of mind and the serenity and the quietness and the perfect circumstances to learn. But maybe that won't come. So learn even when it's chaotic. Commentaries tell something very profound. Don't say that when things improve, when circumstances improve, then I'll study. Because maybe you're Joseph. Maybe you're like Joseph. Maybe the ideal circumstances for you are in fact the chaotic wartime, the turmoil, and the chaos. There are two paths of ascent. There's the path of tranquility. Things are calm, things are stable, things seem to be perfectly calibrated and suited for development, for advancement, and for growth. There's a completely opposite path. Some people, they flourish specifically when the conditions are bad, are awful, are apparently ill-suited for success. Some people, and we'll see Joseph as one of these people, actually, in the ideal settings, they don't advance. You put him in a war when things are unstable, when there's turmoil and tumult. And that's when he flowers. That's when he flourishes. That's the story of Joseph. Joseph was forged in war. When he's with his family, he's got Jacob, he's got brothers, they have wealth, they have prosperity, they have recognition, they have status. What do the brothers think about him? They think about him, look, good for nothing. A bum. Look at him. He's so useless. The only debate is to kill him, to chuck him into a pit, or to sell him. Nothing will be lost. That was their assessment of Joseph. And you know what? These were people who were capable of making accurate assessments. Because in that setting, in the ideal setting, Joseph didn't amount to much. He was, indeed, unremarkable. What happens? Joseph is thrown into the pit. He's stripped naked. He's sold as a slave. He's sent down to Egypt, which was the worst place spiritually. And he flowers, and he flourishes, and he becomes so great, greater than the rest of his brothers. And that's not a coincidence. It was specifically in the chaos, in the tumult, in the turmoil, that was the ideal conditions for Joseph. That's how he flourished. In chains, in war, in chaos. Joseph became the greatest of his brothers. What would have happened if Joseph was never sold? He just remains with his family. What would have happened? If he was never thrown to the fire? It's obvious to me that he wouldn't have actualized his potential. He wouldn't have become the greatest of his brothers. All that difficulty, all those challenges, all that pain, all that disappointment, all that squeezed the greatness out of Joseph. Now the brothers, they became great on their own right. No one's going to say the brothers were not Shiftei Ka, the tribesmen of God. Each one of them was an absolute star. Each one of them is worthy to be a founder of a tribe of Israel. But they took a more conventional path. For them, if they were thrown to Egypt, if they were sent into prison, if they were accused of a crime they didn't commit, if they were forced to be in the cesspool of Egypt, they would have crumbled. They would have buckled. For them, the ideal setting for them was with Jacob, with the family, in the land of Israel, in a state of availability, of spiritual availability. These are the two paths, the path of Joseph and the path of his brothers. And we see it in their story. Dreams. Joseph has a dream. And he tells his brothers. And they hate him. Why do they hate him? So if you and I were to ask that question, we would say, well, they hate him because in the dream he said that he's going to be their king. No, they hated him before he told them the dream. What is a dream? A dream is where someone is asleep and part of their soul departs them and their intellect is compromised. It's a state of spiritual weakness, apparently. If you're looking for greatness, you're not going to find it in the dream, say the brothers. Why are you telling me about a dream? Dream is insignificant. It's a time of spiritual weakness. the fact that you're making a big deal out of it, that can only be interpreted as a mistake in the eyes of the brothers. No one's going to achieve great things in a dream. It's not possible. It's a non-ideal circumstance. That's what a dream is. So they hate him because he tells them about the dream. They call him a dreamer because this is evidence to them that Joseph is a good for nothing. It's spiritual wartime. When your mind is alert and awake and your intellect is focused and laser-like, then you can advance. When you're in a dream and you're in this state of imagination and fantasy and spiritual weakness, that's nonsense. That's not where you're going to find something valuable. That's what the brothers, how they view dreams. Joseph tells the dreams, they hate him for it. Why do they hate him? Because they think that this is a sign of Joseph making a mistake. And they deride him as a dreamer. Why is he ascribing importance to share the dream with them? This is an environment poorly suited for spiritual advancement. But the truth is, Joseph's dreams were prophecy, specifically in a time of weakened, of diminished spiritual consciousness, or apparently diminished spiritual consciousness, specifically in an instance where others would not be able to achieve great things. Joseph shone, he flourished. The brothers got down to Egypt. Spoiler alert, that's his parsha. And part of their plan was to try to find Joseph. And the Midrash says that they went to all the brothels of Egypt and the taverns of Egypt, because they imagined that if they would find Joseph anywhere, that's where he would be. After all, he's like this lad. He's always playing with his hair. He's infantile. That's where we'll find him. And they're standing in front of Joseph. He's their own brother. And he's this incredible king. And he's playing games and he's running circles around them. And he's their brother, for goodness sake. And they don't see it. Why not? And he plays game with them. Oh, I know the order. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, organizes them by age. Seems to have awareness of information that he shouldn't know. And they never for even a second consider, maybe, just maybe, the man that we're bowing to is the man that told us that we would bow before him is actually Joseph. Why don't they consider that? Their argument, their logic, was completely sound. We know Joseph. He grew up with us. He was 17 years we spent with Joseph. In the most idyllic conditions possible. With us, with our family, with Jacob, the line of Israel, overlapped with Isaac. And he was a good for nothing. So imagine how much worse he would be in Egypt. That was their argument. Makes perfect sense. If in the ideal spiritual setting, Joseph didn't amount to much, imagine how much worse he would be in a poor spiritual setting. He's around refined people, around righteous people, around Jacob, around Isaac, around the brothers, and he doesn't really amount to much. In peace, he's doing poorly. Imagine how much worse he'll do in Egypt. If we're going to find him here, it'll be in the houses of ill repute. But of course, they have it backwards. Joseph, indeed, he's around his brothers, doesn't amount to much. He goes to Egypt. He's thrown into the fire. He's in the crucible. It's in the least ideal conditions that we could possibly envision for spiritual greatness. And precisely there, Joseph becomes the greatest of his brothers. He blossomed in a state of war. There are two academies in antiquity. The Academy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the second academy, the Academy of Shem and Aver. And these two academies, they trained their pupils, they reared their pupils on the two distinct paths to achieve greatness. Abraham was the most famous person in the world. He was the greatest philosopher in the world. He had thousands, tens of thousands of adherents. Abraham was viewed as this incredible prince amongst the people. This paragon of kindness, this titan of intellect. Abraham was like this, it was an institution of availability. Like-minded people, everyone there together to try to study under the tutelage of Abraham. Shem and Aver, where did they come from? Shem grew up in the family of Noah, the era of the flood, where there's only one righteous family and the whole world is going against them. It's war. Aver is a great-grandson of Shem, and he's a child of the era of the dispersion, Tower of Babel, when once again the whole world seems to turn against God. And they managed to perfect the art of greatness under fire, of greatness in a time of no availability, of greatness when everything is pushing you away from ascent. If you want the Torah, the guidance for how to flourish in ideal settings, you would enlist in the Academy of Abraham. If you want to learn the art of flourishing in war, you go to the second academy, the Academy of Shem and Aver. Jacob, he was a student of the Academy of Shem and Aver. Why? His whole life was chaos. He would have loved to remain in the tent and just to study. But no. You got to go out of the tent. You have to engage with your crazy brother. You got to go to the house of Laban. You have to deal with the drama of Dinah, the awful story of Dinah. His whole life is him being put into these very compromising situations. And actually, the reason why he was put there is because that was the ideal setting for him to grow. Jacob and Joseph are kindred spirits. They're students of the Academy of Shem and Aver. Jacob taught his Torah to Joseph. Which Torah? The Torah of that academy, of the other academy, the Academy of Shem and Aver. Their role was to find their greatness amid the tempestuous, stormy, turbulent winds. The parsha begins. Jacob, he's settled down. He's settled down. It's been so much drama. 97 years of conflict. It's time for a little relaxation. What was Jacob wanting? He wanted to just relax with a cigar and a brandy. Really? Really? Can't be. Jacob wanted to continue growing. Not a question. But he wanted to grow in peacetime. He wanted to try the other school. Let me have ideal circumstances for once, and let me grow in that manner. The easier manner, the more conventional manner. And God says, no, Jacob, you're misunderstanding. The way you're going to flourish is with chaos, and there's more chaos upcoming. Joseph is in prison. And he asks his cellmate, do me a favor, help me get me out of here. Why did he want to get out? Because he thought he would grow and develop himself more as a free person. And God says, no, 2 more years for you. Here is where you're going to flourish. Here in a dungeon. This is not a Norwegian prison, okay? Cable, a masseuse. This is an Egyptian prison, a dungeon. And God says to Joseph, no, you're misunderstanding. You want to leave because you think you'll flourish outside? No. Here, in this worst environment, the least ideal circumstances, here's where you're going to flourish. 2 more years of growing for you. Jacob and Joseph, they would have loved to be like everyone else. Quiet, available, nice coffee, latte, relaxation, peace, stability. That's how we flourish, right? Jacob would have loved that. Joseph would have loved that. Oh, no, it's not for you. You're going to grow. You're going to flourish. You're going to ascend. You're going to achieve meteoric greatness, specifically because God's going to thrust you into the fire. God's going to throw you into the most uncomfortable, non-idyllic, non-ideal circumstances. And when you try to get out of it, God says, no, you're misunderstanding. This is not by chance that you're forced into this very unpleasant life. This is all by design, because this is how you achieve your greatness. Hillel tells us, if you're in a situation and it's not ideal, don't say, oh, you know what? I'll wait for things to calm down. When I have availability, when things are just so much drama, noise, and chaos, then I'll study. You do that, you're misunderstanding. Maybe, just maybe, you are like Jacob, and you are like Joseph. And the ideal circumstances for you is the chaos, is the upheaval. Maybe you're supposed to take a page out of the Academy of Shem and Aver. Maybe what you need, what's best for you, is that other path, that rocky path of ascent. Who's to say that you'll flourish more when things are peaceful or quiet? Now, if you do the math here, we have 12 sons of Jacob, and only one of them, Joseph, is a student of the Academy of Shem and Aver. You imagine that the other ones are students of the Academy of Abraham. So that means, 1 out of 12, 8% of Jacob's sons are designed to flourish under wartime conditions. The other 11, they actually do better in peace. So I imagine that most of us will do better in peace as well. But I also imagine that even within one person's lifetime, there's going to be times where they're going to be put into situations that are not pleasant and that are not ideal. And they're going to have an instinct, like Jacob and Joseph did, to want to escape. Give me some relaxation. Get me out of this place. I would imagine that even if someone, generally speaking, does better in the Abrahamic Academy, in peacetime, in ideal circumstances, we have to take a class or two, a semester or two in the other academy, because maybe we're a mix, and we have, most of the time we'll do better in a good, conventional, conducive environment, but every once in a while, it might throw us a curveball. And we have to realize that curveball is actually designed to help us improve and ascend and elevate. Don't say, oh, when things go back to normal, then I'll study. No. You might be missing an opportunity to have this Joseph-Jacob leap of greatness because specifically of the environment, not despite of it. Now, I'm saying this idea, and I'm saying that intellectually it's very nice, but it's very hard to implement because we all just crave the equilibrium of peace. That's what we want. And we imagine that when we have that peaceful environment, then things will be good. Then we'll be able to really shoot up like a rocket. And it's uncomfortable. We don't want to be in an uncomfortable situation. So it's going to be very hard to remember this. Next time, God forbid, or maybe because God loves us, he'll put us in such a situation. Next time we're in such a situation, we're in the proverbial pit of Egypt. We're in the situation of Jacob and the unending chaos. We're forced to take a semester in the Academy of Shem and Aver. We're going to feel an impulse to run away. Get me out of here. Bring me back to the stability. Get me out of the prison. It's going to be very hard to remember this. This will be like long forgotten in the deep recesses of your brain. So it's much easier to learn intellectually when things are good and we got that cigar and brandy and that coffee and Coke Zero. It's much easier to talk about it theoretically. But the concept is a very important concept to actually try to live with. There are situations and circumstances that seem to be non-ideal, seem to be designed to not allow us to flourish. And the truth is, if the Almighty brought us to a situation that's not comfortable, that's not ideal, it must be that it is for our benefit, for us to achieve something that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to achieve. And there's a whole school, there's a whole academy that's designed for this, the Academy of Shem and Aver. And Jacob and Joseph were full-time students of this, because their whole storyline is growth through adversity. Growth because of adversity. Growth in adversity that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to achieve. Even us, we read their story, we have to learn about the concept and remember that we're going to have isolated incidents in our life where we're going to have to remember this. Remember the concept that there is sometimes situations where we do better because of the drama and the chaos and the apparently non-ideal circumstances. There's a whole school of thought, a whole academy about this. Jacob studied it. He taught all of it to Joseph specifically. And when Jacob tried to get out of his circumstances, God said, no, you got to go back there. You got to go back there because that's how you grow. And Joseph wanted to get out of it. And God said, no, you stay there. You have to grow. Specifically there. I'll tell you a little bonus. After the reunion and the big reveal, this week's parsha, not next week's parsha, Vayigash, 2 weeks from now. Joseph has to tiptoe around the fact that, well, there's not only one Joseph, there's 12 of them. I got to tell it to Pharaoh. Oh, my brothers are here. And he tells his brothers, he tells them, I'm going to tell Pharaoh you're shepherds. He's going to make you heads of his armies and heads of ministers. I'm going to tell him you're simple shepherds. And when you go to him, you tell him that you're shepherds. And you've been shepherds your whole life, and your parents are shepherds, your grandparents, everyone's shepherds. That's all we can do. And when Joseph introduced his brothers to Pharaoh, he brought only a sampling. And so just to say which ones did he bring? The ones that were weaker, that were less impressive. Why? Joseph is really, really worried that Pharaoh will say, oh, look, Joseph is such a star, and he has brothers, and they're also stars. I'll hire them. They'll all work for me. Minister of Agriculture and Interior and State and War or Defense. My whole government will be this whole family. Amazing. And Joseph is very wary of that. He doesn't want that to happen. Why not? Joseph, look how much you flourished in Egypt. Have your brothers come and they'll be ministers as well, and they'll flourish too. No, that's not how it works. Joseph, he's a student of Shem and Aver. For him, actually, being in the cesspool of Egypt is the best for him. His brothers, they need to have the peace and the quiet. If they were in Joseph's shoes, they would flounder. Therefore, for them, they have to find the other path. And I would imagine most of us will do best in the other path, in the conventional path, in the idyllic path. But even us, we have to be aware of the fact that there's going to be incidences in our life that seem to be a little brief moment, a little semester, a little dipping your toe into the path of Jacob, of Joseph, of the Academy of Shem and Aver. And not to say, oh, let me just wait this out until more propitious times arrive. No. God wants you here for a reason. God placed you here for a reason. Now is a moment to take a page out of the book of Jacob, of Joseph, of the Academy of Shem and Aver. May we all be so fortunate as to flourish and grow in all the different types of ways in the schools of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the school of Shem and Aver, in the path of Jacob and Joseph. Judah as well, by the way. Judah is also similar. Judah becomes the patriarch of Messiah in a very non-ideal way. That's why Judah is the one who founds the academy in Egypt. He's like a bit of a hybrid, where he's like his brothers, but he's also like Jacob and Joseph. We have to grow in every circumstance, the good and the bad, because even the bad circumstances could bring out something within us that we would have otherwise not been able to achieve. And if we're students of both academies and we're aware of the two different types of growth and development every day of our lives, no matter what's happening around us, no matter what circumstance we're in, no matter what environment we're in, no matter what situation we're in, we can take another step even a large step forward. I appreciate you listening to this idea. I hope you're willing to accept it. And if not, write me a strongly worded email. Rabbi, I disagree. Bold letters, all capitalized. RabbiWolbe@gmail.com.